Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Tommy Gilmore. This is the Winging It podcast. I am joined, as always, by my friend and occasional best friend, Robert Smith. Robert, good to see you.
Occasional best friend. It depends on how well I've treated him today.
Yep. Yeah, it's very day dependent. And then we're joined with our guest today, Chase Leavitt. Chase is a marketing director for a few different companies. And so I'm excited to sort of hear your insights, chat some marketing, and hopefully spark some ideas for the people listening. But I appreciate you coming on, Chase.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, so at the Winging It podcast, we like to talk about a couple different things, but really the purpose is we want to spark ideas, spark creativity, and ultimately help marketing people to keep up. You know, we know that there's a lot to marketing that's always changing. There's always evolutions. And so our goal is that we hope to bring value to other people in the marketing community. And so we're going to put some, three marketing minds together today and kind of chat. But Chase, why don't you tell people a little bit about like how you got into marketing and a little bit about your resume and some things you've been working on?
Yeah, for sure. So how I got into marketing, I always wanted to work in business. I just didn't want to do any of the boring stuff. Right. So like my family owns like they're a part of a really successful insurance business. And so that's what my dad did. That's what my brother did. That's what all my cousins do. And like, I'm grateful for all the stuff I got growing up and got to do because of that business. But I hated like imagining going in and like having to put on slacks and like a nice shirt and like all that stuff going into work every day. I was like, that sounds horrible. So I wanted to be involved with something. I didn't want to do what in my head was the boring part. And so I actually discovered marketing just at school. First, before I went on a mission, I was going to do entrepreneurship. And then when I got back, I did marketing because I actually figured out what marketing was, you know what I mean? Because I mean, it's funny because I feel like most people don't really know what marketing is. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because, like you said before we started the call with the Winging It name and how, like, I don't know if marketing people fully understand like what we're doing, you know what I mean? So it's kind of funny. But yeah, I did that at SUU. I got an internship with a big business in Cedar, and then I went on to a tech startup, software startup that was they'd already made big waves and been really successful in the for healthcare stuff, specifically like aesthetic healthcare, so plastic surgeons, stuff like that. They moved it over to home building, and so I went there. I was one of the 4 of us that got hired on, and actually got hired to make a YouTube channel. So we were going to vlog the entire process of a startup, and I was super pumped for it. Everyone else was super pumped for it. There was one guy involved that I think he didn't like that it wasn't his idea, and he happened to be the lawyer. So shut that down real quick. So I pivoted, and I honestly just found stuff that I could do. I wanted to do marketing. I know they needed people. So I basically forced myself in to take over doing social media and doing everything for them. And over the 5 years I was there, that progressed to just starting in basic making videos, to managing full social media, to managing the entire CRM for the company, and which included email campaigns and all that stuff. I planned and executed everything for their big in-person events at conferences as exhibitors. And then last year I moved over to a home builder. So I went from software for home builders over to a home builder. And my boss owns a few other companies in this basically the same industry. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know that while you were there, you said that the big thing that you liked to do was like email marketing, email
Mm-hmm.
campaigns, things like that, right?
Yeah.
And I get this question a lot from different customers. I'm sure you've heard the same thing or wondered the same thing, but how do you stand out in an inbox, right?
Oh my gosh.
People get anywhere from hundreds to millions of emails a day, right?
Yep.
So how do you, get somebody's attention in an email campaign? Like what's worked for you? What have you found to be able to stand out?
I mean, the first step is to not care about how often you're in people's inbox, if that makes sense, right? So obviously you want to send it out at the best times, the most likely times where they're going to get opened and looked at and everything. But you also shouldn't be like, oh man, are we sending them too many emails and blah 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 blah, because no one cares, right? Like, I get so many, my email is full of thousands and thousands of emails, and I never unsubscribe from any of them. I just don't read them, right? And so it's actually nice when you get unsubscribed, because that's like very clear that that person, like, you're good. You don't have to worry about them at all. And it's awesome. But to actually stand out in the inbox, we found that you just had to be different. Like, it's kind of like how on social media, you can't just constantly sell your brand on social media. Social media is used to kind of get a peek into people's lives, right? So you make it more personable. And so with email inboxes, what we did was the subject line, obviously super important. But we would do, for our big events that we were attending, we would basically choose something that we enjoyed that was like a comedic movie, right? So we choose something like, what they did just this month that I loved that they did was basically all the emails leading up to this huge event. They basically just quoted and used gifs of Step Brothers, the movie, right? Like, they were getting everyone pumped up about it, making them laugh and everything. And then the last email, so I think it was the morning of the event, it was like, it's a whatever wine mixer, like, today's the day kind of thing. And those emails always got opened. When you use a subject line that is like quoting freaking Will Ferrell, like, who's not gonna notice that? Include an emoji, right? And then another important thing that I learned, was to make sure you control who it shows it's sent from, right? So before we
Mhm.
were just doing from Novi Home or whatever, but in reality, when someone sees a name of a person, they're more likely to open it.
Mhm.
And so you put like Cody from Novi Home, so whatever from wherever kind of thing. So you make it personal. You put their name in the subject line if you can, if it's relevant, and then you just have to stand out in ways that are just going to grab people's attention. It's a lot harder when it's just copy, when it's only like 5 or 6 words, so they're going to see.
Mhm.
But the nice thing is that pretty well, you know how well you're doing right away, because it's so short and such little information.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is really the modern idea of the attention economy is really poignant with the email
Mhm.
inbox for sure. And so just finding any way to cut through that noise, I think can be really important. And I've also found in my email marketing experience that you also need to make sure that if they open the email that they find value in opening it. So,
Yes.
like you said, for the live events and things, reminding them of the cool stuff that they can experience if they show up, and hey, here's where you can buy a ticket. Like, you want to make sure that not only are you, it's kind of like it's kind of like we don't get mad at quote unquote clickbait
Mhm.
if the clickbait is accurate. Like, if the article
Yes.
actually or the email actually lines up with what the clickbait was, then we're okay with it. But if the clickbait is something completely different than the actual subject matter, then we get very upset about that, right? So
Yeah, for sure. And something else that I mean, this might be more of a personal preference, but something that I tried to do is I don't like getting these emails that have, a clickbaity subject line, and then it's just from a salesperson, and it looks like a normal email, right?
Mhm.
Like I understand that like people are going to read it more because there's not an image to kind of collect everything. But
Mhm.
I think the opposite. I think it's exactly that. You need to show them what is in that email and how it's going to bring them value as fast as you can,
Mhm.
right? So a salesperson saying, "Oh, we have this new tech or this new software that can help you and make you more efficient," or I'm like, okay, cool. Like that doesn't tell me what it is by any means, and I'm too busy to take the time because I'm probably not going to purchase it from you. But
Mhm.
if you show me, if there's a GIF of it, of charts or something to show me what it actually is, I personally am more likely to take the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the problem focused uh marketing approach where you don't want to say, hey, we have this really cool feature in our software. People don't buy features. What they buy is a solution to their problem. And so
Yes.
you really need to drill down on that specific piece of it for sure. So
Yeah, for sure.
which is kind of the fun of, like you said, email marketing and copywriting
Hmm.
in general, like getting down to like, why would this matter for our target audience is a skill, and it is not easy. And sometimes
Oh.
you just fall into the, oh yeah, we're just doing this, we have this cool thing, you should
Hmm.
come show up, and then that's usually draft one.
Yep.
And then you realize like, this is bad, this is not compelling, we need to drill down into those pain points, and then
Yeah.
provide a solution rather than actually just like telling
Yeah.
people about something happening.
Yeah. I think what makes it hard and what makes you get in that kind of groove of not putting too much into it is because like ultimately there's, these five specific things, these five things that are going to make your life better, that are going to help your company, that are going to help you make more money.
Hmm.
But the trouble is coming up with new ways to get people attracted to to your solution, right?
Hmm.
So, and for example, I don't do many emails now, but when I was in the thick of it, it was always the software was for progress updates on people building their houses, for basically getting information, basically shopping for a house, right? Looking in the community, seeing if that home builder makes a house that you want to buy, blah 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 blah. So it was all these four and five same exact features, unless we came out with a new one, which was maybe once every 18 months, right?
Hmm.
You just have to figure out a way to constantly say the same thing differently
Hmm.
without saying it over and over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which
And
is a huge challenge.
it
Yeah.
is, yeah. And for me, that's where like AI becomes such an amazing tool. I can give it the input of, I do this, I'm targeting this person, I've already said it, these 10 ways. Give me 10 more ways to say the same thing,
Yes.
and it
Yep.
starts to spark those new ideas and new angles and things like that.
Yep. Yeah. AI ChatGPT is my best friend, man. Yeah.
You talked about email and things like that. What other sort of out of the box ways have you found are good for marketing and standing out?
I've had a very unique experience in marketing that, when I was at that software company, it was business to business. So kind of the funnel gets smaller there.
Hmm.
And then it's for home builders, which shrunk. And then that excluded real estate agents, got even smaller. So it's sales teams of home builders, right? And some home builders don't have a sales team. They just use real estate agents. But what we had to do is emails and in person, right? Were the only things that actually showed ROI basically on marketing, right?
Hmm.
So we had to figure out a different way because there's only so many events. You know, emails are great, but they're not the best, right? And
Hmm.
so we had to come up with this idea of getting things in front of people. Our boss at the time, he, like a year before that, some random software company, sent him one of the mini like Pac-Man machines, like the tiny ones, right?
Hmm.
Never opened it, never played with it, but it's on his desk, like still to this day, right? So it's been years. And he's like, I did not contact them back. I did not email them back. I didn't do a demo with them. I didn't do anything, but I know that company sent me this thing, like, and I'm going to keep it forever. Right. And so we
Mhm.
came up with this idea, and we needed people, one, to like be surprised that they're getting this, but they needed, two, is that from his experience, he never talked to them. We needed them to talk to us, right? So we actually sent them, we came up with this idea. I don't understand how we got it approved, like with the budget, but we, I think we targeted like 60 home builders in a specific region that we wanted to get. And we got contact information for their sales or marketing people or someone relevant, and we sent them AirPods. But it was only the case in one AirPod. And we included like a postcard size like note that said like, hey, we're Novi Home, like blah 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 blah. If you want your other AirPod, like all you have to do is do a demo with us. You don't have to purchase with us, you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is do a demo with us. And we got, I mean, I'm stuck with percentages, but we probably got like almost 10 demos from it, which I expected more. Like I would have talked to whoever sent me AirPods. So I don't care what they, right? But I mean, we got like 10 demos. We got a handful of contracts from it. People were incredibly surprised by it, and they talked to us, right? And so that has always been something that I like to reference. It's one of those things where it's not an everyday thing that you're going to do, right? And you don't want to do that kind of thing. Like
Mhm.
ultimately, you want people to come to you because you have a good product and they know about it, brand recognition, blah blah blah, right?
Mhm.
But when we're a young company starting up and needed to we're in little old Cedar City, Utah, and they're building 500 homes a year, like it's
Mhm.
kind of hard to get people's attention. So that worked really well. And then another thing that we did and that they do to this day, um, there's this massive conference every year. It's called the International Builder Show, IBS. Horrible name. I don't know who approved it. Like,
Not a
yeah, I
doctor.
don't know. Oh no. Yeah, but it's like it's massive. And so what we did is we got all our office was super into sports, super into shoes, like sneakers and stuff. And so um we actually did like a book club of the month within our office. So like they paid for us to get the book or Audible, and we'd all read the book together kind of thing. But everyone's favorite book is Phil Knight's book, Shoe Dog, and it's about him starting Nike. Um, it's the top 3 book for me. It's amazing. Um, but what we did is we got books, and then we contacted all of our like top clients that were going to be there at the show, and we got their shoe sizes, and we got them shoes. Which you're getting, and they weren't cheap, crappy shoes. Like they were $150 Nikes. And so we said, hey, make sure you come to the booth the first day, get your shoes, and wear them around. And they're these bright blue Nikes, right? And so everyone's wearing them around. Everyone they get to the booth as fast as they can. People that have no idea are walking past the booth. They see a stack of Nike boxes like it's a freaking shoe store, and they're like, "Wait, how do we get those shoes?" And they're like, "Oh, you gotta be a customer." And so we get these demos and everything. And now it's gotten to the point that literally every year, this is the 3rd year in a row, people expect it. They're like, oh man, I'm so excited to go to this show. I'm so excited to get my Novi Nikes. And people wear them, and people know that they're from this company
Mhm.
solely because every year they're there. And I was talking to, I'm actually really close with them still. And I was talking to one of the guys over there, and I said, like, this might turn into a problem.
Eat
Like,
up their marketing budget for a whole year.
yeah, like, because I mean, like those booths at those conferences, man, are expensive. Like the
Mhm.
last time I did one for them, we're talking just the location. We're not talking carpet, electricity, internet, furnishings, nothing. Like not even gas to the show, and it was like 30 grand.
Mhm.
Dude, it's expensive to be there, and then you're adding the this year I think they did like over 100 pairs of shoes. it's tough and so that's one problem that people don't think of is like, yeah, you're getting all this attention, you're doing this. It's so expensive. It's so expensive to continually, you know, get people's attention, right?
Mhm.
So it's tough, but it's fun to when those ideas work. It's like, oh man, we should do this all the time. But really, it's it's 5% of everything else.
Yeah. It really is like those stories are great in the fact that marketing is sometimes you do just have to take a moonshot, you know?
Mhm.
You have to try something really weird. And and a lot of those really weird ideas, like at least in my experience, like, hey, let's try this, and it doesn't work. You
Yep.
just don't get the response that you wanted. And then you've sunk some of the some of the marketing budget into pretty much no returns or very few returns, right?
Yep.
But every once in a while you actually hit really well with something. It's like sometimes you do have to take those Hail Mary passes. And I think the really interesting thing that some of our listeners might take out of this is this has got me thinking about what are some like shock and awe physical marketing tactics that we could try, where it's like you said, having a physical object, something that your clients or your customers associate with your brand. Like, I got this from that company and I'll never forget it. I'll never forget that they sent it to me. I'll never forget that it was them. And it will, it'll leave just kind of like a weird sense of joy around that moment or something, or a
Yeah.
weird sense of like confusion of only getting one AirPod out of two,
Right.
and just being like, this is a crazy idea, like,
I know.
and those moments can be really, really powerful. And I think it's something that we almost lose in the current day and age of digital marketing,
Mhm.
where we're so focused on writing enough emails and social media and all that stuff, and we get such good metrics on the back end that sometimes it's really easy for a company to just look at those things where we're like, well, we know that
Yeah.
this worked to a certain number and we can just keep doing this, and they
Yep.
just try that on and on and on. But as we've seen in recent years, a lot of these platforms, it's just more difficult to succeed without professional help. Like, if you don't have somebody as a
Yeah.
media buyer who really knows their stuff on Google Ads or Meta Ads, like, it's
Yep.
way tougher. You can't really just set it and forget it like you might have been able to back before there weren't a lot of privacy laws, and
Yeah.
all these cookies would just follow you all the way around the internet
Yeah.
and watch everything that you're doing. Now with increased privacy, which I think is a net good for humanity, but makes it harder for marketing professionals, right? In this space, it's easy to look at those things and be like, well, we know this works, so let's not, shake the boat or whatever. Let's not
Yeah.
change it up. But sometimes changing it up, like you said, at that conference where they're expecting those Nikes, that's a brand recognition that you couldn't buy in a different way. Like, you can't just
Yep.
pay the conference to say like, hey, could you have people showing up super early to our booth first thing when they come in? Like, you can't just pay the conference to
Yeah.
do that. So
Exactly. Yeah, at that conference, actually, I got to go as an attendee rather than an exhibitor for the first time, which was awesome.
mhm.
But and one of the education classes that I went to, they talked about, I totally forgot the book, but they talked about having the 5% in your budget, right? So 95% of your budget is like locked down, like you're keeping track of it, you're doing this, like you have to run a company, you have to pay people, like you have a living kind of thing. But you keep that 5% to, in the situation that we're in that class, it was as a home builder, use that 5% to blow someone's mind, right?
Mhm.
So their example, the guy that talked about it was, they built a home for this family. Um, the wife was pregnant, they had 2 kids, and so they went out, bought them like not just some crappy bikes, but really nice bikes, had those bikes, and they bought, a balance bike for the future baby, right?
Mm.
That's not a normal thing. You can't afford to make that a normal thing. and it's
Mhm.
not going to be a normal thing. But for that one time, that family, the parents are brought to tears. They're going to talk about it. They're going to tell their friends about it. The company, depending on what they want to do, can turn that into a marketing moment where they can record it. They can make something out of it, depending on what they want to do with it. But I think you have to be able to, for the 5% to be possible, the 95% has to be there, right?
Mhm.
And so like one of the companies that I'm doing stuff with right now is an HVAC company. And so we're really pushing it, and we're starting basically from ground zero on the service side. And so we're trying to attack from all angles with all the basically this with everything you can't track, right? So like billboards, just pass along car, like door to door stuff, right? We
Mhm.
can't track it. Like with, if someone calls in to say a service, oh, how did you hear about us? They can tell us. But the whole point of all these tiny things at 95% is that ideally they didn't see the billboard once. They saw the billboard, they saw the sign on the corner, they saw our van driving down the street, they might have saw an ad on Facebook. Is that the 95% has to get to that 7 to 10 times of seeing your brand
Mhm.
for it to work, right? And that's where the 5% comes in, is that people may have seen that enough, they just haven't pulled the trigger yet, and that 5% is what gets them to pull the trigger. And you don't want to rely on that 5% is the other thing, right? And so you just got to figure out how, you need to cover your bases, you need to learn what works, what doesn't work, which is included in that 95%. And then you know you find out what works, hit what works, but don't stop trying new things. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a hard
absolutely.
mix, and that's the tough part. I think the hardest part for me over the past years of being a marketer has been proving myself, right? And so I've never had uh like a team of marketing people, never had a coworker, never had anything. It's always been me. And so the hardest part is like, hey, I'm doing all these things, and they're like, okay, well, what's happening? And you're like, well, on social, on digital, I can show you all these things, but like I can't prove to you how many times the billboard has been seen. I can't do all these things, but ultimately
Mhm.
those are the things that are really helping, that are getting your brand into people the back of their heads,
Yeah,
right? And you just got to
absolutely.
be ready for it.
Yep, for sure. I think also in my experience, sometimes it is tough to justify your marketing efforts, right? Because marketing is one of those interesting industries. When you're a marketer, it's not like a lawyer or a software developer, where people can't walk up to a lawyer and a software developer and just tell them how to do their job and feel
Mhm.
confident in what they're saying, right? Like I would never walk up to a lawyer and is like, "Hey, have you tried this?" Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but with
I would try this
marketing,
argument in court if I were you.
yeah,
Just try it
exactly.
once, see if it works.
Yeah. But with marketing, everybody has an idea of,
Oh yeah.
or they saw some tweet or watched a YouTube video, or like everyone has an idea and everyone thinks that it's really easy to do marketing because they have ideas about it. They've never had
Yeah.
to like have that rubber meets the road moment where they're like, hey, this like now I actually have to execute on these ideas rather than just having ideas.
Yeah.
And so but yeah, I think that big thing that you also mentioned is like you need to be able to have enough room in the budget for failure, because you need to have enough space to run experiments and see what results come back. And
Exactly.
not every shot you take is going to hit with marketing, because
Yep.
literally almost every company everywhere is aiming for the same people. Like the home builders that you are targeting are also consumers that are being targeted by literally every consumer brand in the
Yep.
world on the
Mhm.
same platforms and in the same way. And so cutting through all of that, like finding where those little levers are that you can pull,
Yeah.
you can't just do it. Like you can't just say, I know this will work 100%, because if we could do that, then if just the three of us could do it, we would be the wealthiest marketers in the world, right? If we
Oh
could
yeah.
just say we will do this and it'll bring you results guaranteed, like we would be bazillionaires by now.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, I'm such a big believer, and maybe it's because I'm in marketing, that like you have to fail, and like failing is the best thing that could ever happen to you, kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
Is because you can't, like, it's one of those things. You don't know happiness without knowing sadness, type of deal. Once you understand that, it gets better. Like you anticipate it. You don't want to fail, right? If you don't fail and it works great.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to fail if I don't have to. But one of the hardest parts, and I struggle with it from day one of being in marketing, and this is something that, like your guys' clients or business owners need to understand, is that it takes time to figure out
Mhm.
what works and what doesn't work. Because if you're doing a campaign that you're like, all right, I'll put this much dollars worth, like we're going to run it for 6 months, we're going to see what happens, and you go through the first month and don't see anything, you're not going to see anything in the first month,
Mhm.
right? Unless there's like a viral video or something, which
Yeah.
doesn't happen as much as people think.
Mhm.
And so getting people to understand how much time and effort is put into it, especially when they're like, man, why aren't we at the top of Google? You know what I mean? I'm like,
For that business I
go,
just started last week.
exactly. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, how much money do you want to spend to be at the top?
Yeah.
And then you have to be like, okay, well, just so you know, this is the amount of time it's going to take to get to the top. You know what I mean? It's like,
Mhm.
SEO is freaking, it's just SEO and Google ads are my least favorite thing, solely because I just don't understand them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I can do the
Yeah.
basic and everything, but it's like, man, like there's so much that goes into it. I'm like, I built, like, when I say I'm a one-man marketing team, like I've built every single one of our websites. I did not go to school. I don't know how to code. I don't do any of that. I have to do like stuff. And so now I'm like, well, okay, I finished this website. It's good enough for me. Luckily that's really good for other people, that don't have eye.
Mhm.
But now I'm like, well, crap, like not one image on the entire website has alt text. Not one
Mhm.
image has a description. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like,
Mhm. Yep.
Yep.
It's
like
so much work.
oh man, it's crazy. And the nice thing is, though, is like it's proven to work, that if you do it right and you do it consistently, it's going to happen, right? But
Mhm.
people don't want to wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want to wait.
Well, and ultimately, kind of like what you were saying before, is you just never know what the experience will be until it's out there, right? Like
Hmm.
one of my favorite marketing stories from the last like 10 years is Peloton, where
Hmm.
they put out that really like crappy ad right around Christmas.
Yep.
Mhm.
And it's like this guy is borderline mentally abusing his wife. I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys remember this
Yeah.
commercial.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
And then
Yep.
Ryan Reynolds hires this actress like the next week. They're making fun of Peloton. Like they're just lighting into this poor company. And by all measure, that should have been a marketing failure.
yeah.
No.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
4 months later, the world shuts down, and everyone's like, wait, who had that weird commercial for the bike
Yeah.
at home? Like,
Wait,
what
I
was
need
that?
one of those.
And it worked. Like it stood out
Mhm.
because of
Yeah.
all this like negative press. And so
Right.
Mhm.
like you don't know what you like. If you classify it a failure, I would call that a big failure. Like that message did not land with people. It was mocked publicly for
Hmm.
Mhm.
to the tune of millions of dollars. And then
Hmm.
4 months later, they're like this massive company and still around today.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's one of those things. In marketing, it's nice because you can pivot, right? Like,
Mhm.
you don't have to pivot the entire company. You just have to
Yeah.
pivot the message,
Yeah.
Yep.
which is hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's better than having to figure out a whole new product.
I know that, you, like you said, you're a one-man marketing company. You're trying to figure things out, and you're doing it alone. And
Hmm.
Robert and I, we love to be here for people. We believe in collaboration and things like that. The best idea always wins is kind of what we tell our team. So we'd love to
Yep.
take a couple minutes, Chase, and kind of talk about any sort of marketing struggles that are going on for the companies that you work for. Like what do you feel like has been the
Hmm.
biggest struggle?
You know what I struggle with the most is on our home building side is content, and
Mhm.
it's not that there is no content to get. It's what content to get and how to go about it. Do I want to do something more serious, like bring your family here, blah, blah, blah. Or do we want to make it fun? Do we want to make it viral? Do we want to do? So that's what I've struggled with the most with that is what, because we have to show our product, because our product, it's the biggest and most stressful purchase anyone will have in their life. Right. So I need to show off the product while also making people not get tired of seeing us. You know what I mean? So that's what I struggle with is content.
So as far as that goes, who is your ideal client?
Our ideal client. So we're kind of a different kind of home builder. We are a custom home builder, but we actually build literally everything. We have 2 communities right now that will be having townhomes and smaller detached single family homes. But we also have homes that are, the customer has like a $3 million budget, right? So ideally, I mean, in my head, where I want it to go is I want to hit right in that middle part where we can build a spec home where, we can start on these homes and then people will come in and take over, right? So ideally you're looking for, people 35 and up, which I wish it was younger because I'm not even 35 yet and I want to build a house and I work for a home builder and I can't even afford a house. 35 and up, people that, in our area, a lot of people are coming from out of state, people that want to live quietly, that want to enjoy life, that want to enjoy the outdoors, while not being away from everything.
Yeah. And what like primary pain point are you guys solving for them, or do you want to advertise that you're solving for them?
Right now, we want to let people know that it's not impossible, right? Everyone thinks it's impossible. Like, I know I just kind of made it sound like that, but it's not impossible. People don't understand that, that you can find something. It might not be the house of your dreams, but it can be like your house, right? So people just need to understand that it's possible.
Yeah.
I think is where the content problem comes in, right? You want to show off these beautiful homes, when in reality, most people aren't going to be able to get one of those.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we can't get them something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. My thought is, there's a lot of different angles that you can take on that. And again, we're just brainstorming here, right? But yeah, on the content side, content marketing is my cup of tea. That's what I spend most of my time doing, that and SEO. So thinking about what content will resonate, and how that will work. I think the it's possible angle, I think that is a really good starting point for, okay, if this is the message we're trying to get across, how can we get that across? I think there's a couple different things that you could experiment with. And again, this is the area where you hope that your team, your boss, whoever's around you is okay with failure as you explore these things, right?
Yep.
But like you said, you want to demonstrate these beautiful homes, but that's probably not where your target market's budget is at, right? And so I would almost maybe think about, how can we demonstrate a beautiful home that is in that reality space? So that way it's not just this aspirational, like, oh, that'd be so nice to have a house with that kind of space. It could even just be like, just in terms of the content that I've consumed, I've watched a lot of tiny house content, and I love like Swedish furniture videos and stuff that's like very space efficient.
Yep.
And so that could be a good angle to like include, is like, the house isn't very big, but you make use of the space well, and it's still beautiful if it's small, kind of thing. I don't know. You have any ideas, Tommy?
Yeah, I thought of actually 2 ideas with it. One, there's a lady on TikTok that my wife and I, we've seen her videos a few times, and they always make us laugh. She's actually a realtor, and her angle for real estate is, this is where I would hide if I were playing hide and seek in this house.
Yep.
She's in like 3 or 4 different rooms of the house, and she's like, oh, do you know where I am? And then she's like behind a curtain or whatever. Like,
yeah,
it's just this kind of fun angle. And so, going back to almost having like a physical object or a physical space, Maybe you guys have a partnership that you get a rug or whatever, like something like that for the house. You give it to everybody when they buy a house, and you're like, hey, look, here's 3 places you could put this nice of a rug in this kind of house. So even if the house isn't a multi-million-dollar McMansion, you have a nice rug, you have a nice object that really shows the space well, but also makes it feel really accessible to people our age, where we're looking at it like, oh, I couldn't possibly afford a nice house and a nice piece of decoration, but it's included for buying and building with these guys, and I know what it looks like because of this. And then the second idea I had is just general social proof. So just talking to like people that buy, like talk to them the day after closing or on closing day, when they're getting the keys, just a quick interview, and then maybe go back like 30 days later and go back and say, hey, would you be willing to still like add on to your testimonial a little bit about what the experience was like building with us, and not just the emotions, but some of what was more of the experience and things like that. Like you kind of capture the emotion of the day, but then 30 days later, they're walking through that process, how long they had to save up, what the mortgage looks like, going through specific things that make it so that the people consuming the content can see themselves in that social proof.
Yeah. If you're going for more of a viral campaign, because like you said, do we want to make it fun? Do we want to make it more serious? I think to play off of Tommy's idea of these are the places you could put this rug, you could put it in completely absurd places, right? You're like, we put this rug on the ceiling, and I think it really brings the room together up there next to the ceiling fan, or like random stuff like that. And it couldn't just be
our kids
rugs.
Needed separate rooms, so we hung it in between their beds.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that. It's like how to use a nice rug in this house, things like that. You could come up with some silly ideas, and then it doesn't, like, you could also switch to other types of decor, other types of furniture, and say, come up with absurd ways to use desks or whatever else in those homes, and then you get to show off the home, but also kind of make it silly and fun. That kind of drives up that brand awareness. So
I mean, if you wanted to go straight silly with it, you could just do like how to decorate your Velocity home, right? And you're just using every object completely wrong, but again, you're showing it off in like nicer rooms, or like it's already pre-staged, and then you have this piece of furniture or this whatever that's like for sure standing out.
No, I love it. Those are great ideas. I love it. I'm gonna have to use them.
Awesome.
If you want silly ideas, Robert and I are the kings of silly, so we could do that all day.
We can't sit down and chat without having multiple silly ideas. That's just what we that's what we do. So
that's the best kind, in my opinion.
Well, Chase, if you wanted people to sort of take one thing away, or anything like that from your experience in marketing, let's say that they're new getting into marketing, they're just starting a new job, like what's your advice to somebody that's just getting started or just starting with a new company?
I mean, taking it back to Nike and Phil Knight, is just do it, right? In all aspects of work. Just write the blog. Even if you suck at copywriting, just come up with the post, even though you suck at, if you don't have experience in this. You gotta fail. And as long as, I mean, it's, some companies aren't, some people aren't the best to do that with, but ultimately you just gotta be willing to learn, and you gotta be willing to do the things that you don't know how to do. The other day I texted my wife, we just got some vans wrapped for our HVAC company, and I was like, I've literally done everything. I've done email campaigns. I've managed a CRM for massive, big companies. I designed solely by myself, designed vans for an HVAC company. I have never had experience in any of those things. So literally just do it, try your best, take input from people, use the input, don't get discouraged, don't get offended if someone doesn't like it, and just, grow and become someone that someone's willing to pay a lot of money because of your experience.
Robert and I, when we're looking at failures or when we're looking at things like that with our team, we're like, hey, you know what? It's all data at the end of the day. Any sort of feedback you get is data. And as long as you like take the art out of it and start to be scientific with the data a little bit at some points, and then you inject the creativity back in when you're in the creative process.
Yeah.
I think that's how you have to look at it. You know,
Yeah.
When we go to clients, we're always like, hey, like we know X, Y, and Z doesn't resonate with this kind of a person, or you know, this messaging isn't hitting with whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I mean, the last thing I just thought of, and it doesn't have anything to do with marketing, but if it's advice for someone, you know, new, starting a new job, a young person or whatever, is try and find a workplace where they care about you becoming better. Find a workplace that if you go into their office and you say, hey, I have an offer, a job offer from this other company, like I think I'm going to take it. It's a big opportunity for me. They should not be disappointed that you are leaving them. They should be excited that you've been able to grow into and become successful, and that their only disappointment is that they can't afford to keep you, right?
Totally.
So find somewhere that
Absolutely.
appreciates you and is going to help you grow.
That's great advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Chase, this was super fun, man. I appreciate you coming on. Guys, if you're watching, I hope you got some really good nuggets, some good ideas from this. This has been the Winging It podcast. We are marketers that are just helping other marketers. We hope to see you next time, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chase.